Hello and welcome to Wednesday. Yesterday we came back from our 10-day trip in Arizona. It was a lot of fun. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about it, kind of recapping what happened, and also talking about a few things that maybe weren't filmed and how we felt about the trip as a whole. But first, we went out and did a few errands today, including shipping out Dinah, the Dinah Blade Kirby painting, and we also had lunch. And I'm mentioning this specifically because it's big news. We went to McAllister's and their King Club did not come on a Hawaiian roll. It now came on regular bread.
I had a salad, and I will be dreaming of that salad for a while.
Oh yeah, they had a special
It's
salad.
really
It was
good.
like a cherry.
It was a black
dried
cherry,
cherries,
spinach, gorgonzola,
chicken and bacon.
and candied pecans.
Yeah, I didn't really get a good shot of that. I was just mostly focused on the fact that I ordered the King Club and it came on bread, and I was like, what's happened? There's bread here. Anyway, it was good. So we're going to do our Arizona reflections, and this is actually the first time I'm ever doing this this way, where I've decided to write out a list of like what happened. And I think that that'll help because, for one, it'll help us remember things a little bit better, but then also it should make this video less rambly, because a lot of the reflections videos are a little rambly and long. This should help it be shorter and more to the point. So we're going to get started with Saturday. Saturday was whenever Dan picked us up here and took us to the airport. We were mostly on time.
Yeah.
Mostly. There's been trips where we have been more behind than we were for this one. But the big thing was I was still recovering from the appendectomy. I had been home for like a week-ish.
Week and a half.
Or something like that. And at that point, I still hadn't really carried anything. And on the way out the door, I picked up my backpack, which Mal didn't want me to do.
I was going to weigh it, but I forgot and didn't have time.
Mal wanted to take it herself because I was told I wasn't supposed to pick up anything over 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks. And I picked up that backpack because we were kind of in a rush, and it was like, people were taking stuff, and I'm like, all right, well, I want to help, so I picked up the backpack. And when I picked up the backpack, I felt it. Like, there was pain.
How much do you think it weighed?
I don't know, probably not much more than 10 pounds.
Yeah, it was basically an empty backpack with your laptop in it.
Yeah, I had that and like the GoPro in it, I think. So it was not terribly heavy, but it was the first time I had picked up an object with weight. And it was a situation where, like, when I picked it up, I was like, that don't feel really good. And then when we got in Dan's car, Dan has a car. We have the SUV, and we don't really have to like get down into it. But when I got in Dan's car sits pretty low to the ground. So I remember I got into the car, I was like, woo, because I'm way up in the air, and I get into a car and it's like falling down to the earth.
You're a tall man, yes.
And that was another situation where I was like, oh my god, like really wrestling my jimmies type thing. And I remember on the ride to the airport, I wasn't feeling real good. And I shot a clip for the vlog, and I know I don't really show it, but I was thinking, man, this is not good. I hope I'm okay. And when we got to Myrtle Beach Airport, I was starting to get really worried. I was like, man, I really feel sick. Like, I do not feel good at all.
And we had to go through security with the TSA, and
it was just a really big ordeal, and I was starting to get really concerned as we got through security and got to the gate. And the person came up and was like, hey, we're overbooked for this flight. Would someone be willing to catch the next flight and get a $500 voucher? And I remember looking at Mal, and I was like, maybe I should just go home. I felt really bad. And she was really worried about me, but I decided that I'd come this far, and I really wanted to go on the trip. And I was like, well, maybe I'll start feeling better.
Because until you picked up your backpack, you were doing good.
Yeah, I was.
Like, you were kind of like, oh, I'm fine, I can do this.
Yeah. So then we got on the plane and we went to Charlotte. So by the time we landed in Charlotte, I was actually feeling pretty good.
I made you take Tylenol.
I don't know if that did anything. I didn't take my pain meds. I left my big important pain meds that do all the helping here, just because I hadn't been using them anyway. So I didn't want to feel like I had to rely on them because I wasn't using them. I figured I wouldn't need them. Anyway, as a side note, and this is just funny for me, I took my cowboy hat, and I'm going to call these vlogs the cowboy vlogs, because I wear a cowboy hat in pretty much all of them. It was about a month or two ago, I made our Patreon video. We make an exclusive video for our patrons every month. And one of the things I asked about in that video was, you know, I'm going on a hike. I've never been hiking. What is it that I should think about or take? And so many people said, you really need to bring a hat. And I was going to buy a hat on Amazon, and then I remembered I had a cowboy hat. I had this cowboy hat from like 10 years ago. Dan is the one that actually bought it. Dan.
It's Dan's hat.
It's Dan's hat. Whenever we were in college, Dan took a video class, and I think the criteria for the project was like make a music video. And for whatever reason, Dan decided that he wanted to make Rhinestone Cowboy, and I was the performer in the video. So I walk through the streets of Savannah and I sing Rhinestone Cowboy. And he bought that hat for the project. Now I wore the hat in the project because I was the one performing it, but then I never gave it back to Dan ever. And it's been in my parents' house since that quarter from college, so for, you know, almost 10 years. And I was like, oh, I'll just take that cowboy hat. And Mal really didn't want me to take the cowboy hat. She was like, no, you should take a normal hat. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna be a cowboy. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna dress up like a cowboy. So I just thought it was funny because Mal was really kind of against it. And I when I went over to my parents' house and got it, they were like, oh, are you wearing your cowboy hat? And I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, you look so good in the cowboy hat. And I just looked at Mal and she was like, but even your family loved it. They thought it was, I think it's funny. It's not like that I really wanted to be a cowboy. It's just that there's a humor factor. Walking through the airport when you're 6.5 feet tall in a cowboy hat, like everyone's like, well, who is this guy? Especially when you're not wearing like the cowboy getup. You have like a fan gamer shirt on, and they're like, what are you? Anyway, we spent so much time, and we're just on the first day. We landed in Phoenix, met up with Mark and Rhonda.
I have a thing.
Oh, do you?
In the airport, after Steven was like, this hurts,
yeah,
I wouldn't let him carry his backpack anymore.
Oh yeah, I don't think we ever film it, but Mel was...
Well, see, I had my backpack.
Mel had her backpack
on
your... You had your backpack on your back.
Uh-huh.
You had my backpack on your front.
Uh-huh.
You were also carrying your purse, and then whenever our check bag arrived, you did that too. Mm-hmm. I think I may have carried your purse at that point.
Yeah, you had my purse then.
So I was a 6.5 foot tall cowboy with a cowboy hat and a purse. We were walking through the airport, but Mao has got her backpack and my backpack and the check bag, and I felt so bad. But I also knew that I probably shouldn't help you anymore because I didn't want to hurt myself.
I would have fought you.
You probably would have. So we landed in Phoenix, met up with Mark and Rhonda, who complimented the hat, and then we started driving from Phoenix to Sedona, which was like 2-3 hours away, something like that. And then I'm mentioning this because it kind of carries throughout the trip. On the way there, we passed through Winslow, Arizona. And when we did, Rhonda said, oh, isn't there a song that talks about Winslow, Arizona? So everyone
about Winslow, Arizona.
So everyone was kind of like trying to brainstorm what the song was. And we came up with like 3 different songs and then realized they were all the same song. And it's Take It Easy by the Eagles. And there's a line that says, I was waiting on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. That's important because that song followed us creepily throughout the trip. More on that later. Anyway, so we got to Sedona, we had some dinner, went to bed. So the next day, Sunday, we got up in the morning and we went to Tuzi Goot, which I believe is actually pronounced like Tuzi Hoot. I think that's what the pronunciation of the sign said.
I think the park ranger said it was Tuzi Goot.
I know, but
there was also a pronunciation guide.
And it said Tuzi Hoot.
Yeah.
Tuzi Hoot, something like that. So that was cool. It was just like a little pueblo from the 1930s or something like that, or it was excavated in the 1930s. And it was neat. Then we drove to Jerome, and the main reason we went to Jerome was that we had just heard that it was a really cool like haunted city, and there was a haunted hotel, and it was so weird because we heard it was like a ghost town, and when we arrived,
it was a ghost town.
Well,
but not like we thought.
Well, I mean, when we arrived, we were expecting it to be like an empty city, and it was like a bustling city. In fact, there's an annual thing they do in Jerome every year, and it's like this house tour where you get to go in all these houses. They only open them up like once a year, and you get to check out all these houses. and we apparently were there for that specific day of the year. We didn't do that tour,
A
but
ghost tour.
but that was a thing that they opened up once a year, and there were people there for that. So that's one of the reasons why Jerome was so busy. But we explored the city. We were trying to decide where to eat. There was a place called Haunted Hamburger, which we passed up, but it was probably a good decision because we ate at a place that was
Really unique.
slightly more interesting. There's the hotel that sits way up on the top of the hill called Jerome Grand Hotel, and it was a hotel, but it used to be a hospital.
And it sat abandoned for a long time while they debated making it into like a tuberculosis,
Yeah,
like
it
a
was.
sanatorium.
It had a really interesting history, and the waitress talked about like very specific ghosts that haunted the hotel. And when you go down to, and it was a restaurant, so we ate at the restaurant. But when you go downstairs to the hotel, and I don't think I filmed any of this, but there's a guest book, and when you stay at the hotel, you can write about the experiences that you have. It was really interesting to look through that because it talked. There were so many people that had like similar experiences, and I don't know if they went in with like knowing nothing and then had similar experiences, or if they read the thing and then had confirmation bias because they were looking for that specific experience. But it was still really interesting. So the hotel was really cool. Just honestly, being where we were in the restaurant and looking out into
It overlooked all of Jerome.
yeah, it was a really cool thing. And then we found out that the ghost town was a small subsection. And it was an old mining town. So that's whenever we went over to that part of the city. And we learned that it was mostly an eclectic collector who had collected a lot of weird junk and put it onto this property and charged $5 admission. It was neat.
Yeah.
But it was worth $5 and like not a penny more. It was it was a bunch of rusted cars. There was old buildings, and he had just kind of thrown stuff in it. There was a few things that were just totally unsafe.
Oh yeah.
That I was like, okay, I guess I'll be careful not to trip over this thing. But it was still neat, and I think that's the closest I've ever come to seeing like an actual ghost town, like an abandoned city. I'd like to like look up like a legit one.
There's a few. Like there's one in California, and I forget the name of it, but it's like very famous.
That would be cool. I'd like to do that someday. There's one in Japan that's like for recently, and it's you can't visit it, but there's been people that have like broken in or whatever. And
Are you talking about like where the tsunami was?
maybe, I don't know. I just remember seeing pictures. There was a lot of people that were upset about it because they were basically looting type thing, but just the fact that it was an abandoned city was really neat.
Yeah.
So after Jerome, we drove a little ways to Montezuma's castle, which has nothing to do with Montezuma or the Aztecs. It was just discovered at a point in history where Americans were like, I guess the Aztecs did this. So
Let's call it Montezuma's castle.
and it was a really small stop, but it was neat. And we got into a lot of these places with a national park pass that Mark and Rhonda had. And if you are going out west and you're going to go see these things, get the park pass. It's I don't remember what they paid. It was like $80 or something, and it's an annual pass. It works for the entire year for up to 4 people. So if you're traveling, you have 4 people in the car, then you are set. Because a lot of these places that we stopped, they were like,
$20 a person.
yeah, like $10 to $20 a person. So, for example, stopping to see Montezuma's castle, it was super neat. But it also only took like 10 minutes to see. And if you have a family of 4 and you don't have that pass, then you're coming in and you're going to be spending, even if it was like $8.
I mean, it worked for Tusigoot too, and
it worked for
like a few places.
It worked for a few things, and there was a few times where we didn't think it was going to work because it was like a state park, and they ended up accepting the national park pass anyway. So, if you're going to go out that way and you have, a few people in your party, like get that annual pass because it definitely saved a lot of money.
And if you have someone who's like older, they can get a pass for cheaper.
Yeah, if you're a senior citizen, you can get it for even less, like almost nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really cheap. Anyway, or a lifetime pass or something.
Something.
So after Montezuma's castle, we went to Montezuma's well, which
The people I think it was the people who lived in the castle, which was, I don't remember what tribe of Native Americans it was.
I'm not generalizing, but I'm pretty sure that almost every single tribe on the trip was Navajo.
There's a couple others.
I mean, there was a couple other, but like by and large, most of the stuff that we saw was Navajo, so it might have been Navajo.
Well, the well was like where they believe they came from the earth.
Yeah, there was a deep religious thing for them that they thought that was where the Navajo people or whatever the tribe was, like, was born from the earth, and from a more general standpoint or a scientific standpoint, it was interesting because there was like a big limestone deposit, and also
like the water was
full of arsenic,
and like the only thing that lived in it was leeches.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing, is that there was wildlife unique to that specific area, which is really cool because I mean, you think about, the world is big, and all of these plants and animals and bacteria and life have like moved and found their way into different ecosystems. Like, there's a specific body of water that's not even
very big,
not even that big, and there are animals that only live there. That's cool.
And they
That's
don't know
really
how
neat.
deep it is or something like that.
Really?
So I think so, because like it starts to get like kind of like molten sand, and they can't determine where the bottom is.
Okay, I don't remember, but as a side note, because I mentioned from the day before that "Take It Easy" was something that we
Heard a
had
lot.
thought of. On Sunday, I don't remember where it was exactly, but we heard "Take It Easy" play. It might have been on. I think it was on the radio while we were listening in the Jerome Grand Hotel when we were having lunch. Like, it came on the radio, and it was like, well, that's weird. Anyway, then after that, we went back to Sedona. We had dinner at the pizza place, which is important in a second, and then we went to bed. So then it's Monday. And on Monday we got up and we did the first hike, which was Cathedral Rock. It was also the most difficult hike. And that was like me mentally saying, all right, it's go time. Let's see if I can do this. And I did all right. In fact, I felt like I did really well. And I don't really think that if I would have been at max capacity, if I would have continued up the mountain anyway. We got to a certain point, and me and your dad and you were just kind of like, I don't think we can go up any higher, because what happens is the elevation for Cathedral Rock is like do, 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 and you get to a certain point and it's like brr, and they call it the butt crack because there's these two big huge rocks and there's a little path up the middle and you have to like
wedge yourself in it and like rock climb.
Yeah, and that's the only way to get up, and it does. It looks like a giant natural butt crack. And when we got to that point, I certainly couldn't do it, and everyone else was like, I don't know about that.
My dad and I don't like heights.
But Rhonda wanted to do it, and right at that moment, there was a group of people coming by, and they said, we're going to go up to the top. Do you want to come with us? And Rhonda was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we waited on Rhonda, and it actually took her a while because she went up, and the path ends after a point, but if you keep going, you come to these things they call vortexes, which is like...
There's like 5 of them in Sedona.
There's 5, yeah, they're spread throughout Sedona or maybe even Arizona or something, and it's supposed to be this place where like your creative energies, something, I don't know, some weird pseudoscience nonsense, but there's these places where you can like sit and you like feel this rush, this vortex, this rush of energy. So I think this group of people were actually interested in doing that. They wanted to go there, so Rhonda was like, all right, whatever, it's something cool to experience. So she continued on with them, and come to find out that they were staying in the same hotel. They had eaten dinner at the exact same place. Mm-hmm. The lady that she had been talking to had worked at like the same hospital, because Rhonda's a doctor and had worked in Chicago, and apparently like they worked at the exact same hospital.
And the gentleman like helped build it or something.
There was like all of these really weird connections there. It would have only been better if she was like, and my favorite song is "Take It Easy" by the Eagles. So that was really interesting. She was up there for a while, and then she came back, and she got to see the top, which was really cool. She took a few interesting photos.
I mean, even where you and I stopped, there was a little bit of a rock climb. Yeah. Where when we had to come down, we had to get on our butts and kind of do it like a crab walk.
Yeah.
And that was hard for you.
Yeah, that was... Going up is easy, going down is hard. And I think that anyone would agree, whether or not, whatever kind of shape they were in or whatever kind of health they were in. But for me in particular, the part that hurt the worst was whenever my body had to like scrunch over, because all of my, my surgery and stuff was right here. So what happened was, whenever we were going up, it was easy. When we came down, we had to slide down on our butts, and that hurt. That was not pleasant, because I was basically trying to like be very, very careful and come down. And if there was ever any points where like the ledge was far enough down where I couldn't just step down and I kind of had to like hop, that was bad, because like there was a jolt when you landed of like, ugh. So that was not great. And then after coming down, sitting in the car, I was like, all right, that kind of hurt, but it was still, I still enjoyed it. And
that was the hardest hike, probably.
And I can also say that the first time I ever went hiking, I had just had surgery. Like that's kind of interesting. That's neat. After that, we had lunch, and I wrote down a bullet point that I had a pretzel. I did. It was
great. A big soft pretzel, and you had mustard.
It was a bread company that we ate at, and they made their own pretzels, and they had homemade mustard, and it was just really, really great. Then we drove over to a place called Oak Creek Canyon Overlook. It was just a place to overlook. There's a few of them in here.
Oak Creek Canyon?
Yeah, it wasn't particularly notable. Then we went to Sliding Rock, which is the natural...
That's a state park, and we had to pay for that one.
Yes. It was a natural water slide. And it was cool.
Stephen didn't do it because he can't like soak his...
Yeah, they told me before I was disbanded from the hospital that I couldn't get a bath, I couldn't get in the pool, I couldn't do anything where my body is soaking. Like a shower's okay if the water's hitting it and it's coming from a source that's not...
Questionable.
Questionable, but to actually get into a water source like that, I wasn't allowed to do it. But that was fine because we got cool footage.
And it was so cold. It was ice. Like, imagine having a glass of ice water and having to like jump in it, and then you don't know where it's gonna go, and it's like really disorienting and cold, and you're just like, I want to get out.
There was one of the interesting things about going on this trip and doing these things was that we didn't have a whole lot of good internet when we were driving around, and it made looking up stuff difficult. So a lot of times we would find out that there was this thing like Sliding Rock, and we would have enough data to read that it was some natural water slide, but then not enough data to find any images. So we didn't even know what it looked like. And in my head, I had pictured that it was like this thing, because it said like it was 80 feet.
Yeah.
Well, I was assuming it was like 80-foot drop or something, and I was like, wow, they're going to go down this like 80-foot water slide. And then we get there, and it's like, it was cool, but it was not what I was expecting.
It's like a slightly more exciting lazy river.
Basically, yeah.
That's ice cold.
But I mean, it was really interesting, and we got cool footage because we got to use the GoPro.
Yeah.
So glad that I took the GoPro on the trip. We got a lot of use out of it. And then dinner that night, we had cactus fries, which was a cool experience. First time ever trying cactus, and it's good. It's actually really good. It's a little tart, a little sour, and then the dipping sauce was prickly pear sauce, and honestly, it was sweet and sour sauce. That's what it tasted like to me. It tasted almost identical to that. And then that night is probably the biggest event that we didn't get on camera, and that was stargazing. Rhonda actually found this event that was going on and signed us all up for it and took care of everything. And we drove out into the middle of nowhere, a little tiny town, and went to a soccer field, and there was a bunch of people there, and there were 3 different, like, I think hobbyist astronomers who had their own telescopes, pretty big telescopes.
Yeah, not like just the ones on tripods.
No, they were
like big.
They were big. And they were like 5-6 feet tall.
Yeah,
like this big around. So they were big telescopes that they had, and it was cool. It was like 2, maybe 3 hours, and we sat in these chairs. They gave us all blankets because it was a little chilly, and he had a laser pointer that you could see the entire beam, and he could point to the sky and you'd actually be able to see stuff, and he pointed out constellations and told about the history of things and things like that.
We got to look at some stars, some nebulas, some galaxies.
And what was so interesting for me is that I've never been in a place like that had as little light pollution as it had. I've always been in, I mean, there's not a whole lot of light pollution here, but even here you can't see satellites. And that was the first time I'd ever seen satellites in the sky. It was so cool to sit there. You have to sit there for like 15 minutes with no light, so your eyes adjust. But once your eyes adjust, you look up into the sky, and there's satellites everywhere. And it was such a cool experience to be able to, for one, see all the stars, because once your eyes adjust, you can see 1,000 stars in the sky. But then after that, to see all these satellites just buzzing by, it's like, you know that there has to be satellites up there to do all of the things that we need to do on Earth, but to actually see them is a wild experience. But we didn't really get any footage of that because the guy didn't want you to use any cameras or anything like that, because they produce light, and if you have light, then it messes up your eyes and you can't focus.
Your night vision.
It messes up your night vision. So there's no footage of that really. I took a few photos before the event started, a little video, but it's just something I'll have to remember myself. So after that, it was Tuesday. We drove towards Williams, and we had lunch in Flagstaff at a little cafe place that was really good.
Yeah.
We stopped at Sunset Crater, and we did the lava flow trail, and that was cool. It was just basically there had been a volcano that had erupted some time ago, and it had made all of this lava rock all over the path.
And it looked kind of alien.
It did. It really didn't fit the backdrop. And there's a really cool part where I remember filming the lava rock and a mountain in the distance that has snow on top. And there's just such a contrast, because you've got snow in the far background, and you have the remnants of lava in the foreground. It was just kind of a neat experience. Then we drove a little further into Waputki. I think I'm saying that right, or Waputki. And there's a visitor center there with a drink machine that didn't work. I remember that vividly. And there's a pueblo that has been either reconstructed or like they found it that way, and they've been taking care of it. And that was super neat. Like, we didn't get a lot of footage of that. I remember the only thing I really shot was from a distance looking at it, but we actually walked around the whole thing, and there was a thing at the visitor center, a little book that told you what each room was, and we actually got to go through it and read about it.
The interesting thing for me with that was comparing it to Tuzigut. This one, they had a lot more information, and I think it was a lot more recent.
Yeah.
Because in the visitor center, they talked about how there were 2 national park rangers.
And they came and stayed with the Navajo people.
Was it the 50s?
I think it was the 50s.
Because there were photographs of them in those buildings.
With them. And that was super cool. If you ever get a chance to get out that way, you should absolutely drive out to Waputki. So then we arrived in Williams, and Williams exists solely
because it was on Route 66.
Because it was on Route 66, and because it served as the train to the Grand Canyon. Otherwise, that place would not be on the map. That place is there strictly for tourism. There are 3 blocks of things, and that's it. I mean, it's a super tiny place. So Williams is not a place that you would ever go unless you really either wanted to experience some of Route 66, or if you were there specifically to take the train to the Grand Canyon. It's tiny. It's not a big place. However, the hotel was actually really cool. I thought the hotel room was like really modern, because in the shower they had it comes with like soap, shampoo, conditioner, and they were all in these pumps that were like on the wall and had been refilled before you ever got to your room.
They had made a little tag that was like, this is to save, having all the little bottles and stuff. Yeah,
I loved that. I thought that was so cool that, they're giving you the stuff and it's like right there. You don't have to worry about picking anything. It's just right there. And then also, it's the first hotel I've ever seen where the coffee maker in the room was a Keurig. And I was like, that makes sense. Good God. When you think about what you're trying to do, like,
let's make a cup of coffee.
You're trying to make a cup. No one's going to make an entire, what do they call it, carafe of coffee,
kettle,
whatever. So like, that's the first time I've seen that, and I'm like, why aren't more hotels doing this? We had dinner at the hotel. We explored the 3 blocks, and we didn't really show any of that on tape, but there was one shop we walked into, and they had some like souvenir type stuff, and we got something for my mom and dad. Basically, every like big trip we go on, we always bring something back for their curio cabinet. And sometimes we show that on the vlog, and sometimes we don't. But we went and got one of those.
It was a
things.
geode, and there was like these little metal things they had attached to it. So there was like a guy with a shovel inside the geode, and then there was like a swirl cactus on top, and
it was super cool. So that's what we decided to get, and I have a picture of that. And then that was it for that day. On Wednesday, that was the day we were going to the Grand Canyon. We woke up and there was a cowboy show outside.
Near the train stop.
We were a little late, so we missed some of the context of it, but apparently they got off the train.
Yeah, they the train rode in, they got off it, and they had their little cowboy show, and there were horses and like a set.
Yeah, so they did their little show, which was interesting. And then after that, we got on the train for the Grand Canyon, and we went 60 miles, and it took like almost 2.5 hours, but we got there. But it was really neat. The train car that we were in was an original train car from like 1923, and it was, I think, one of the older train cars.
It was the oldest train car. He said everything else was from like the 60s.
There was no AC. You just had to kind of put your window up or down. It was up, but people understand window down. And it was fine. I wasn't too hot or anything, and it was a really enjoyable ride. There was a guy in each train car talking, kind of explaining the sights.
History of the train and the train car you were on specifically, because they had different styles. Like ours was a Pullman car, so it's just kind of seats like a school bus would be.
Yeah.
And then there was train cars where you could like pay more to be in that car and go up into this like bubble and see things every which way. Yeah. So it was cool. And the range of like prices for the seats that you could get was insane, because ours was like a reasonable, seat, but they had seats that were like $1,000 a person. And I can't even fathom having, for one, having money to say I will spend $1,000 on this train ride. But then also, like, it wouldn't have been much nicer than where we were. You got to sit up a little higher, and they gave you as many free snacks as you wanted. If you can eat $1,000 in free snacks, then maybe it's worth it. But the guy that was talking was really nice. He was an older gentleman. And his manner of speaking was perfect for that job. And it was also very comical to me because of like just the way in which he explained everything. He'd say, "Well, folks, if you look over on the left side of the train, I believe you'll see a group of Mustangs. And Mustangs are what we call horses." Like that was the way he talked, almost with a whistle. Almost, yeah. It was perfect, and like you could tell that wasn't something he was trying to do. You could tell that was the way he actually talked, but he was perfect for the job. So then there was also entertainment. Some guy played the guitar. We saw the Grand Canyon. Finally, it was incredible, and I know I say it on that vlog, but like you can't appreciate it without going there. Like you see these videos and it's like you can tell that it's big, but there's a weird sense when you walk out onto like one of the overlooks and you're just surrounded in all directions, and it's so far. Yeah, like, it just really feels like it never ever ends. I mean, you're looking out in all these directions and it just goes on and on and on past what you can even see. It's just an incredible experience. And it's quite big. Absolutely worth it. And one thing I may have not stressed or said in the vlog is that place is handicap accessible. So if you are in a wheelchair or you have a family member who's in a wheelchair and you feel like, that's something you wouldn't be able to do, like you can visit the Grand Canyon. There is so much of it that is paved and flat that goes along the rim. So you can see it. So don't feel in any way, shape, or form that like you would miss out on this incredible thing just because you may have a disability. Like you can see it, and it's so cool. We were on the South Rim, and we went from the visitor center to Grand Canyon Village on the rim trail, and that was completely paved.
It was completely paved, completely flat, completely wheelchair accessible, and we walked for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was a small portion. I mean, there's more that you can see, and from what I understand, a lot of it is actually, you know, handicap accessible. So that's really cool. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so the next thing is that we headed back. There was a train robbery.
It was part of the show from the morning.
It was part of the show, and apparently Mao and Mark and Rhonda knew that it was going to happen, and I didn't. So I was very genuinely surprised.
Well, they called the beginning of the show, so they knew it was going to happen, and I was told that it was going to happen from them.
Oh.
To make sure you filmed it.
Oh, okay, well I didn't hear that. It was just, it was funny because, you know, this guy, this train announcer person for our car was like, well, folks, if you look out to the right, I believe there might be some train robbers out there. And I was like, what? And I look over.
These two guys ride up on horses.
It was awesome. Like, it's super corny, and they're playing it in a very comedic, corny style. But it was actually really cool. Like, you're on a train, and when you look out, there's these big guys in, you know, cowboy outfits on horses with bandanas, and they're riding alongside the train. It was like something you'd see out of, like, you know, one of the old Western shows. And it was a really neat experience. And then
they stop the train.
The train comes to a stop, which is funny too, because the guy's like, "It seems the train's come to a stop. That doesn't seem good." So then the train robbers come through, and the announcer guy says, like,
before they got to our car,
he said something like, they're
not very bright.
They're not very bright, and they just want breakfast money. So everyone get out like $1 and give them, you know, $1. So basically tip them for doing this performance. So everyone in the train gets out like $1 and it's like holding up the dollar. So whenever the guys come through, they're taking all the money. And what was interesting, and I don't think I filmed it, is that the two guys come through, and then it's like 5 or 10 minutes later, another group of 2 different guys come through. And I'm like, why are you here? We already gave our money to the other people. So they come through and they say, has everyone been properly fleeced? It was just really funny. So that was Wednesday. We got back home, went to sleep. On Thursday, we left Williams and we headed first to the Little Colorado River overlook, and that was where it was like super windy. I don't know how windy, but it had to have been hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bizarre. I've never been in a situation where it was that windy that it wasn't a hurricane. It was quite unreal. We also bought another souvenir, and I have a picture of that my mom had posted. So we have the geode that we bought, but then we bought my mom a necklace because they had a bunch of Native Americans there that set up a booth, and they are, you know, selling their different, you know, wares. A lot of them have jewelry, which is what we got.
There was a lot of pottery.
A lot of like carvings and things like that. It was really, really neat. It was all, you know, authentic because they were the ones that were actually making it. And the overlook was pretty too, but that's not what I'm going to ever remember. I'm going to remember that I almost like fell over because it was so windy. Then we drove to Page, and Page is an interesting town. Page is really small. Page is small. It feels old. It feels kind of sad in a way, honestly. Like, there's not much there. There's not much to do. There's not many restaurants. It's one of the situations where, like, you're looking up restaurants and you bring up Yelp, and like there might be like 1 or 2 good ones for the type of food you're looking for, and then all the other ones people were rated and they're like, this is not edible food. So it's not like a great place, but it is, however, really close to a lot of awesome natural things. One of them was Antelope Canyon, which I'll talk about soon. The rental house that we were in, though, however, was amazing. It was absolutely beautiful. The view was beautiful. It was right at the end of that little residential area, so you could just see way out at everything. It was gorgeous, and then we did like an entire walkthrough of that. And then the family got there, and everyone talked, and I don't think I filmed anything else the rest of that day, just because everyone arrived and we just kind of sat around talking. Then the next day was Friday. That's when we went to Antelope Canyon, and there's There's High Antelope Canyon, like where you do
Upper.
like a upper, and that's where you do like an overlook type thing.
No, it's just like what we did, except it doesn't have the levels.
Oh.
But it's way out, and you have to take like an ATV or a truck to get there.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. That's not what I thought it was. We did Lower Antelope Canyon, and even without knowing what Upper Antelope Canyon is, I would say Lower is better, just because it was such an incredible experience. You follow the guide. It's not even that far out. It's like a 5-10 minute walk, and then you start going down these steps, and before you know it, you're underground.
You're in the bottom of it,
and there's a slit through the top, so you never feel real claustrophobic. There was one of the people in our group, one of Mal's aunts, said that she was claustrophobic, but she felt like she was okay because she could always look up and there was sky. So if you're claustrophobic, it may still be something that you can do. You had to be a little physically able to get through there, though, because there's parts, and I know I shot some GoPro footage of it, where you're really having to like kind of squeeze through cracks and stuff.
Stairs.
And
steep stairs.
Steep stairs and really narrow stairs. But it was great. The guide was great. He actually gave a demonstration at the very end where he kind of showed on a much smaller scale how this was possible. Whenever you have dirt, you have all of the sand around, and you add water because the water comes through.
With monsoon seasons.
With the monsoon seasons, everything, becomes wet and starts solidifying. Then the sand covers up on top. And one of the things that he had mentioned is that when the sun is baking this, it will turn to rock quick, like in a day. So if water comes through and it gets sand wet or whatever, like it'll actually turn that to stone within a day of baking in the sun. So in
the video you can see like all these layers, and like that's thousands and thousands of years each single layer.
Yeah, and in his demonstration he showed like he pours water on the sand, and it gets wet, but then immediately starts drying up. He covers it with sand. He starts making that wet, and that starts to dry up. He covers it with sand. He does it like 5 or 6 times, and then he shows that there's like a great deal of water coming through.
No. Then he took his hands around the outside and kind of like drew a circle around it to pull the sand away.
Yeah.
And then it kind of made like this pillar, like you would see out there where these big rocks stand like this.
Yeah, and that was I forget about that part. So like whenever you see like how the rocks are out in the middle of nowhere and they're huge, that was basically a small scale version of that. So after he did what you said,
where he made it look like the towers.
Then he took water and he started pouring it slowly down the middle. And what happened is, even though it was very hard, it started to create little grooves. And that's kind of how Antelope Canyon formed, is that whenever you're looking from the top, there's like a crack all the way down, but when water starts to get in there, it really tears like the inside apart. So whenever you give it enough time, then you can form these really incredible things like Antelope Canyon.
He then took it and split it in half. Like he'd take a sandwich and show the middle.
And you could see, he did this over the course of like 5 minutes, and you could see the layers.
And you could see it kind of curve like the canyon did.
Yeah, it was just really neat because it was, a small scale way to understand something that, has taken obviously a lot longer than 5 minutes.
And where we came out of the canyon, like you keep going up all these different like stairs and levels, and then you finally just kind of emerge from the top of this tiny little crack where my shoulders kind of got stuck. And then he was saying, because he walked us where we came out, he walked us past that and did his demonstration. And he said with all the rain we get in monsoon season, it keeps running down and it's still making Antelope Canyon. He said, so, right now we're coming out here, but in 100 years we may be coming out 20 feet further.
And another thing that I don't think is in the vlog that I thought was super interesting is that they always have to really check the weather before they take you on these things into Antelope Canyon. And he said the reason is, if there's any even possibility of rain, they have to cancel everything, because the rain fills up in Antelope Canyon quick. He said you have to be careful because he said it looks like this place is pretty big. He said, but 5 minutes, it's up to your knees. 10 minutes, it's up to your waist. He said in 15-20 minutes, it can be over your head. And he said the problem with the water in here is that there's nowhere for it to go. He said, so
it's like a gutter on a house. It just all kind of goes into the same place and washes through.
It runs, it comes in from every direction because there's a crack in the top. So it's coming in the sides and it's coming, down the middle. He said the problem is it gets in there and it just keeps hitting against everything else. He said it becomes like a giant washing machine. He said, so if you get in there, he said, you can't get out. So that's why they have to be really careful. But I thought that was super cool. And they actually have metal ladders that are on top
There's like boxes above, like where the crack is in the ground. So when it rains, if anyone's down there, they take them and they throw the ladders down so people can climb out.
Yep. So that was neat. And obviously I wouldn't want to get like trapped in there, but I also am really curious what it would be like in there when the water's coming through. Anyway, then we went over to, after Antelope Canyon, we went over to Lake Powell. And
to the marina.
The marina. And we just kind of looked around. That was just for later. Then I think I immediately cut to bed. And it's just because not a lot happened. We went back to the house.
We ate lunch at Lake Powell.
Yeah, and we show that. Then we come home and go to bed, and it's just because most of the evening we just sat around the pool, chatted. I was the music DJ actually because I had the equipment necessary to set it up, and I just took requests and played things. So take it easy in there. And I haven't even been mentioning that, but seriously, we heard it every day. Like on Wednesday, whenever we had the entertainer in the train car, one of the songs he only played like 3 songs. One of the songs he played was Take It Easy. And on Thursday, we might have heard it on the radio, like it seems like it came on at every single restaurant. Actually, on Thursday, when we drove to Page, we had lunch at the Dam Bar Grill, and it came on the radio there. So it was seriously like every day. It was really weird. But we had, on Friday we had like a frozen pizza and we talked and then we went to bed. On Saturday we went back to Lake Powell just to do that little boat tour. And it was cool. And that was basically it. We went back to the house and you painted because you had brought watercolors. And we played music and nothing really happened. So you don't have to feel like you missed out on a lot. We played, I think there was probably 1 or 2 occasions we played games with the family.
We played Telestrations.
I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't. Phase 10. And then there's a game called the Emily game that I don't know if that's the actual name or if someone named Emily kind of made it and kind of introduced it to my family. But it was a mix of charades.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to explain.
Like, everyone has these slips of paper and you write down a word or a phrase and it all goes into a bucket. And then you have 2 different teams. And then when it's your turn on your team, you pull it and then you have to describe it without saying the words or doing any gestures. And then after we get through all of them in the bucket, and whoever gets the most has points for each one. And then they all go back in the bucket, and then you have to do it with charades where you can't talk.
Yeah.
But then you're starting to remember, one of the words was coyote, so you're trying to look for it. It's
the same pool of words, so you start to become familiar with the words.
And then the last round is you're only allowed to say one word for your
to represent that
paper.
clue. Yeah. And it was kind of neat because you had to remember what the clues were because when you get to the end and it's one word, someone's going to name off one word and you have to remember back through all the clues from the previous 2 rounds and think, what clue is that trying to refer to? So it was pretty neat, but I didn't film any of that. And then on Sunday, we woke up and went to the Horseshoe Bend overlook. And I have a note on here that Asian tourists are fearless. They are. There must be no fear in their body whatsoever.
There were so many tourists there to begin with. Like, there was French Canadians, there was people from Korea, from Japan, from China, from maybe Vietnam, and a lot of them are right on the edge. Some of them are wearing really terrible shoes. There's a girl in heels.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, I said fearless. I would say a large portion are, well, I guess they're all fearless, but some are stupid. Because some of them are wearing heels. Oh my God. Some of them are wearing paper thin sandals. And it's, oh my God. But really, whenever you went there was a lot of tourists, especially at Horseshoe Bend. And I think it was just because there were so many people visiting and it's such a small portion, whereas in Grand Canyon, you're more spread out. But the highest percentage of people who were out on the edge of the rocks, who were doing the craziest things, were the Asian tourists. So they are seriously fearless because they are coming from the other countries and they just are totally cool with risking life and limb to get the ultimate selfie. There are people standing on the edge of a 1,500-foot drop-off in high heels with a selfie stick. It's windy, and they're like trying to get the right angle. And Mal couldn't actually look. Mal would look out and see people doing stuff, and she would start to feel physically ill, like she could not look. And I was watching, and I was like, this is nuts. This is how people die. I mean, no one died, but it was scary, man. It was really scary. And we were in sandals that day. We had brought hiking shoes, but we had been leaving them in the car. And Mark and Rhonda actually went to play tennis that morning, and we didn't have our shoes. So we took our sandals, and we stood a little further back than we normally would.
Yeah, there's no way I was going near that edge.
Because it's scary. I mean, when you're in hiking shoes, you at least feel like you're a little more sure-footed when you're walking around. But when you're in sandals, when you're in flip-flops, you can trip. You can die. Like, if you trip when you're near the edge, you could roll and you're gone, man. Like,
I watched this one girl, she went to sit down, and she didn't even use her hands, and she has her back to the canyon.
She sat down backwards.
And like,
oh my God.
if she would have just lost her balance, or like I don't know, tripped on her skirt because she had a big skirt on, like she could have just like really went. And after that, I was like, I'm done watching these people.
And I mean, it's oh my God, it makes you a little ill. And that, certainly not everyone there was in bad shoes.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the people that came, they were obviously a little more prepared, and they had, the backpacks with water and stuff, and they had hiking shoes. But to see someone out there on a rock in high heels, like, high heels with a selfie stick trying to take a picture, like, I'm just thinking, you are either super fearless or you are not fully thinking through the situation here. Like, every once in a while, a gust of wind would be like, and everyone's like, oh, it's, windy. Like, you could die. Anyway, none of my business. Then after that, we went to the Hanging Garden Trail, which was just a cool little trail near the dam. We walked.
It was a cool trail.
It was pretty short. We walked a little bit. It wasn't too difficult. And then you get under this overlook, or overhang at this rock, and there's all this cool greenery. We took some cool panoramic shots where you're starting the panorama, and then as someone gets out of the frame, they run and get into the frame. So the picture itself, the background, is as it should be, so it doesn't seem weird, but the people are repeated, and that's a really cool effect. And then we went back to the house and relaxed.
Whenever we went back to the house, like, we would jump in and out of the pool. Not you, because you couldn't. But like the rest of the family would throw on their suits and jump into the pool, which was heated and warm, but it was so windy, like the wind would hit you and it was cold.
Yep.
Then we'd go jump in the hot tub, and then we'd be like, all right, we're done with the pool for today.
And then other than that, we had dinner at the Mexican restaurant that night. And I didn't film any of that. I just took a picture and posted it on Twitter, but I had enchiladas with fried eggs on them, and it was good. Fried eggs should be on everything. Then the next day was Monday. We basically woke up to goodbye to the family. We drove to Phoenix, which is about 4 hours, maybe close to 5. And then we met up with Steph and Steve, who are super awesome. The drive from Tucson to Phoenix is 2 hours one way, and they drove 2 hours to come see us. We had dinner, we chatted for a little bit, and then they drove back. So it was like really, really nice of them. Yeah. To drop what they were doing that day and like come see us. I really appreciated that. And then Tuesday, yesterday, we woke up at 5:30 a.m. Pacific. We got on the plane and we were home by 5 p.m. Eastern. And that's it.
That's it.
That's the trip. And that took a lot longer. Like, it's good that I had this bulleted list. It's good in one way because I didn't forget anything. But if I would have forgotten stuff, it probably would have been faster. Sorry this was so long. I'm sure a lot of you treated it like an audio podcast and you've been in other tabs, and that's fine. It was fun. The trip was really enjoyable, and the only thing that I wrote that I would have liked to have done and we may do in the future.
And the rest of the family talked highly of it because we weren't with the rest of the family the whole trip.
Yeah, we were with Mark and Rhonda for most of for the beginning part, and then we met up with the family near the end of the trip. And the other family had went to Utah and done Zion
National Park
and Bryce Canyon. And they said that it was incredible. So if we ever get back out that way, that's something we would like to do.
They did the Angel's Landing hike in Zion, and they talked, like, that was probably some of their favorite parts along with
Although I've seen video of that online, and it's super scary.
My cousin who was on the trip was taking pictures, and I saw him on Snapchat, and, like, she has her phone out over the edge, and it's a long way down.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. I enjoyed what I did, but I don't think that I'm, for one, like, super physically capable of the bigger hikes, and also not genuinely interested in it. But from everything I saw, everything seemed really beautiful.
Well, there was a hike that they wanted to do but couldn't at Zion, which was called the Narrows, and you kind of walk through a canyon at the bottom, and there's a river. So you walk through the river at the bottom of this canyon. And that's something I wanted to do if we went up, but they actually tried to do it and said they couldn't because the water was too rough.
Oh.
So that would have been something cool too.
Yeah. So if we ever get back out that way, that's what I would like to go and do those things. But as far as the trip goes, it was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. And the other trips that we've went on with Rhonda and Mark have been to Ireland and Greece, which are international trips, and were amazing. But this is a really great reminder that America, the United States, is huge and diverse, and there's so many interesting things to see domestically here.
I mean, even Arizona itself, like, driving from Phoenix to all the places we did, it was like, are you tired of the scenery? Wait an hour, and it would be totally different. Yeah,
I mean, Arizona is a beautiful state, and it really is different than what you're thinking, because you may associate it with, like, the look of Tucson, which is very deserty, and you got the saguaro and stuff like that. But when you start to just drive a little bit, things change. By the time you get to Flagstaff, there's pine trees everywhere. It's a very diverse state. It's a very beautiful state, and it's if you're into that sort of thing, it's absolutely worth visiting. Just make sure you get the national park pass first.
And good shoes.
And good shoes, and bring water.
Lots of water. Oh my God.
No one got dehydrated. No one had any issues. We made sure we drank enough.
I didn't get sunburnt this time. I tend to do on trips sometimes.
I didn't get sunburned. I don't wear sunscreen, and I know that will make many people mad. They'll be like, you're going to get skin cancer. I'm aware of the risks. I don't like sunscreen on my skin. I don't like lotion. I'm really particular when it comes to, like, textures and things like that. So creams, like, make me sick to my stomach. So I don't really like sunscreen. But I also am fortunate that I don't really burn ever, unless if I have my shirt off, I'll get burned a little bit. But I went through the entire trip, did all the hiking, was outside all the time. I never had sunscreen on, and I didn't get burnt. So
I mean, I wore sunscreen the whole time, and we're kind of like the same tanness right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're different people with different family histories and different genetics, so there's things there. But yeah, it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful and highly recommended. So if you are planning a trip out west, Arizona should be on your list. If you're thinking about going and seeing the Grand Canyon, you should. And you should bring your family members who are handicapped, who are in a wheelchair, because they can see it too. There's a ton of other amazing things to see. Driving out to Page is worth it to see Antelope Canyon.
That was probably my favorite part.
It was incredible. Taking the train from Williams to the Grand Canyon was a very unique experience. I'm sure not everyone would be into it, but, like, it was cool. It was actually really, really neat. Everything about the trip was fantastic.
Yeah. You know what the worst part was? How dry everything was.
By the end of the trip, we were really ready to get back to the humidity of South Carolina.
Like, my skin is so dry.
Yeah, my skin started to get really dry and crack a little bit, just because we were there so long, and that's something I've never experienced. And then you realize that, even though we have 100% humidity pretty much all the time here, it is, in a way, moisturizing. Your skin. So it was kind of nice to get off the airplane and get back here and be like, yeah, humidity. It's really nice. But huge thank you, obviously, to Mark and Rhonda for setting everything up on the trip and taking us with them and making sure everything was prepared. And then even while we were there, looking up really cool stuff to do. There would be times, I know they'd go to their room, go to bed, and then in the morning they'd say, we were on our phones last night and we found this thing that we want to go see. So, thank you guys for taking care of everything, and just preparing everything for the trip because it was stupendous. I think they were even a little worried because it was not going to be an international trip, and that was not a concern at all.
No.
Like I said, there are so many cool things to see in the U.S. and we still haven't scratched the surface. There's still so much more left to see, and I'm sure that we'll get around to it. One of the next trips for us next year, me and Mal are going to take an East Coast road trip. Because 3 years ago, we did our West Coast to East Coast road trip, and next year we're going to do an East Coast road trip, like up to Maine and back. Because neither of us have ever been to New York. Mm-hmm. Mal has never seen D.C. I've been to Washington, D.C. on 3 different occasions. I've gotten to see the museums, and they're so cool. And I haven't been in the last 10 years, and I know that I would appreciate them far more now as an adult. So we got to make sure that we get there so you would love it. You could spend a week in DC. You can spend an entire day at each of those museums, and they're just so full of information. You'll love it. So that'll probably be next. Well, next major trip. I'll go ahead and say it now. We might be going out of town for a few days in June. I don't know yet. We still got to figure that out. But we are pretty much 100% going to Wisconsin in July. Because whenever we went to Wisconsin in November, we only saw your dad. We only saw your dad's family in Milwaukee. So it's been a long time since you've been back to Appleton, back to what you would probably consider your hometown. So we're going to try and do that in July. So that's currently the plan, is we're going to be going to Wisconsin in July. Not too long, 7 days, 7 to 10 days with the driving. And
we're going to go see my mom and her family. Carly's not going to be able to get into town for that.
Yeah.
She has a big trip for 4th of July. So we're going to go see her in Minneapolis. And then we got to go see my dad's family and down there. And I want to take Steven to do some things in Wisconsin that he's never got to experience. Yeah,
so there's a bunch of stuff coming up. Fortunately, it's going to be a little shorter trip than this was. We're just going to, we're back home, but it's also, we're all right, we have about a month. So we're going to start preparing content and getting stuff done again because we know that we are going to be heading back to Mal's hometown, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. I also need to make sure I get the car checked up because
that's a long drive.
It's 1,000 miles. It's 1,000 miles one way, and I want to make sure the car's working, as one is wont to do. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I know this vlog is crazy long, but thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you enjoyed it either as an audio podcast or watching the video of us running our mouths. If you've been out west and you've been to Arizona, you've been to these places, certainly share your experiences. It was a wonderful time and we really enjoyed it. And if maybe you're planning on going and you have any questions that we or any of the other commenters could answer, then leave them below. And I'm sure people will be happy to talk about things and mention things. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. As always, let's meet back tomorrow, shall we?